Republican lawmakers in Texas now launching a second effort to pass sweeping voting restrictions at a special session called by the governor. Texas Democrats blocked Republicans' first attempt in May by staging that dramatic walkout. The Republicans there did concede two of the most controversial provisions this time around: limits to early Sunday voting hours and language that would make it easier for courts to overturn election results, measures that making casting mail-in ballots harder, banning drive-through voting centers, empowering partisan poll watchers, all still in the proposal they're talking about in the special session. Joining us now, attorney and contributing columnist at the Washington Post, George Conway.
Hi.
Nice to see you here.
Thanks.
What's going on in Texas? Inevitable. The Governor Abbott was going to call this special session to push this through. The courts in Georgia and other places have sort of said, you know, we're not going to touch this right now. I mean, will we see this march through the country?
I think that's what we are seeing. We are seeing that lots of states are doing this. It's unclear to me, at least, to what extent this will have a negative effect on voting. Some of the provisions are bad. Some of the provisions are so-so. The things that concern me, though, are the provisions that try to restrict or place limitations or change how votes are counted and how votes are tabulated, and the rules about challenging the results, because that to me is where the rubber hits the road. I think that at the end of the day, people who want to vote are going to vote, but the provisions that are designed to overturn, potentially, you have partisan officials overturning election results, are the ones that are most disturbing to me. And it's hard to gauge because you have to know the exact structure of each state's voting rules and election commissions. But it just strikes me that none of that can be good.
George, I wanted to get your take on a fascinating vignette from a new book out by Michael Bender at the Wall Street Journal. It talks about this encounter between then President Trump and then Vice President Mike Pence. And it says this was actually something that happened after Pence's political committee had hired Corey Lewandowski, who is the president's advisor. And he writes this: he, meaning Trump, crumpled the article and threw it at his vice president. So disloyal, Mr. Trump said. Mr. Pence lost it. Mr. Pence picked up the article and threw it back at Mr. Trump. He leaned forward, toward the president, and pointed a finger a few inches from his chest. We walk you through every detail of this, Mr. Pence snarled. We did this for you as a favor, and this is how you respond. You need to get your facts straight. I just wonder what you think about this, because obviously this challenges the very public face that Pence put on, where he was so complimentary and so differential to Trump.
Well, I think the moral of the story is some people, you can only take so much, even Mike Pence. I can only say, though, that I wish that we had seen a little more of that Mike Pence publicly and not heard it, after everything was over, when people are trying to rehabilitate their reputations. I mean, the fact of the matter is there should have been more pushback on the president and more pushback publicly on the president when President Trump, when he did outrageous things. And I just wish we had seen more of that from Mike Pence.
The book also suggests that after the election, the former president wanted to replace Bill Barr as Attorney General with John Ratcliffe. What do you think of that?
What I find most interesting about that is Ratcliffe had the smarts not to take the job. And, again, it just shows you that you can never please the man. I mean, Bill Barr did so much to humor Donald Trump, and yet it wasn't enough. I mean, it wasn't enough because, as it's described in, I think, Jonathan Karl's excerpt, which covers some of the same material, it wasn't enough for Trump because Barr didn't, at the end of the day, engage in litigation on behalf of the fake election fraud claims. He didn't indict Hunter Biden. He didn't issue the Durham report. He didn't indict Jim Comey. Nothing was ever enough for Donald Trump. And the reason why it got so out of hand was, people didn't push back at the interim steps. They acceded to some of his desires and wishes in certain ways, and Barr was one of the biggest people humoring Trump, and it just gets worse and worse and worse, and that's what happened. And that's why I said just a moment ago, I wish that Mike Pence had pushed back a little more, but then again, he wouldn't be renominated in in 2020, and that's the risk he was pushing. And with Barr, he runs the risk of being fired. And that was sort of the moral of the story in a lot of ways about the Trump administration, is that people were more concerned about their jobs than about principle and about pushing back on the president and about doing the right thing. And that's one of the reasons why we are where we are today.
So I wonder what you think about Mike Pompeo's portrayal here, because he certainly would fit into that category here. This book reveals that he warned colleagues, quote, "The crazies have taken over," as Trump's fraud conspiracy theories were growing after the election.
That's really nice that he thought that and that he said that privately. Why didn't he come here, go onto Fox and say that? Why? And we're all hearing it now. Oh, the crazies were there. There was nobody there to push back. It's terrible. Look at it's Rudy Giuliani's fault. Well, you could have said something at the time, all these folks. Well, and they didn't. And that's the most outrageous thing about it.
And it's a
They
recurring
knew better. We're just going to say privately, "No, you lost the election." Shh. And when they didn't do it publicly, they needed to do it publicly. At least, you can give Barr some credit and McConnell, who put Barr up to it, give him some credit for saying we didn't see enough fraud. But that was basically the extent of it. Everybody else just kept their mouth shut. Oh, it'll just run its course. Sooner or later, he'll accept the results. No, he won't. That's not who he is.
Do you think we'll ever get answers, George? Here, I imagine it will take years, but do you think that we will ever get answers from people who are in these positions to do this, and will reflect on this years from now in a historical way and answer that question? Why didn't you stand up?
I'd like to hear that. I really would. Yeah. I'd like to hear that, because a lot of people knew better.
But look, it's lingering. It's the same thing. It's connected to where we are today.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's the same connection to Republicans in office who are afraid of losing their jobs.
Right. And it goes to the same reason why you see just minor pushback against Marjorie Taylor Greene, as was reported in the last hour. They say, "Oh, could you do this little show on TV just to make up for it?" And they don't punish her for saying outrageous things. And yet, on the other hand, you've got Liz Cheney, who loses her leadership position because she simply told the truth. It's the same thing. People are not willing to basically tell, not just Trump, but the Republican base generally, that, here's the truth, and we have to accept that truth, and we have to accept the truth that Donald Trump lost. We have to accept, and here are the reasons why. It's not, it's not brown shirt tactics to make people, or to urge people to take the vaccine that, Donald Trump brags about having created. Right? Doesn't even make any sense. And yet, there's not that pushback. There's not that leadership, because people are more concerned about their individual political careers, McCarthy becoming speaker, than they are about doing the right thing for their own constituents and for their own party. And it's self-destructive. It's the reason why they lost the presidency and the House and the Senate. And it's not going to get them anywhere good in the future.